There is a strange truth about human nature that most people never discover. The harder you try to convince someone, the more they resist. The more desperately you chase respect, the further it moves away. The tighter you hold on to control, the faster it slips through your fingers. This is not bad luck. It is the hidden pattern that governs human behavior. Most people believe influence comes from force, louder words, stronger arguments, or constant persuasion. But genuine influence rarely works that way. The most powerful people in any room often speak the least, react the least, and reveal the least. They understand that the human mind is drawn toward what it believes it has chosen for itself. Reverse psychology is not about manipulation for selfish gain. It is about understanding the invisible currents that shape decisions, emotions, and relationships. Once you begin to recognize these patterns, you stop fighting people directly. Instead, you learn to let their own minds do the work. Resistance becomes cooperation. Conflict becomes opportunity. What once felt impossible begins to unfold naturally. Today, we will explore the 14 laws of reverse psychology, not as tricks to control others, but as principles that reveal why people think the way they do, why they resist pressure, and how true influence begins with mastering yourself before attempting to influence anyone else. Listen carefully, because some of these laws may challenge everything you have believed about power, persuasion, and human behavior. The greatest victories are often won without confrontation, and the strongest person is not the one who forces outcomes, but the one who understands the mind deeply enough that force is no longer necessary. If you stay until the end, you may find yourself looking at every conversation, every relationship, and even your own thoughts through an entirely different lens. And once you see these patterns, it becomes almost impossible to unsee them. Most people believe that when someone resists them, the answer is to push harder. They raise their voice, repeat their arguments, explain themselves again and again, or become frustrated because the other person simply refuses to agree. It seems logical. If someone does not understand you, explain more. If someone ignores you, become louder. If someone disagrees, provide more reasons. Yet human nature often moves in the opposite direction. The harder you push, the stronger the resistance becomes. This is one of the oldest paradoxes of the human mind. People do not like feeling controlled. They do not like feeling cornered. Even when your advice is correct, they may reject it simply because accepting it feels like surrendering their independence. Think about the moments in your own life when someone insisted that you should do something. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps they genuinely wanted what was best for you. Yet something inside you hesitated. You searched for reasons to disagree. You questioned their intentions. You delayed making a decision. This reaction was not always about the advice itself. It was about protecting your freedom to choose. Every person carries an invisible desire to remain the author of their own decisions. The moment that freedom feels threatened, resistance quietly awakens. This is why force rarely creates lasting influence. It may produce temporary obedience, but obedience gained through pressure disappears the moment the pressure is removed. Real influence begins when another person believes the decision belongs entirely to them. They embrace it because it feels like their own discovery, not because someone demanded it. Understanding this simple truth changes the way you communicate forever. Many conflicts exist because both sides are trying to win through direct confrontation. One person pushes, the other pushes back. Neither notices that they are feeding the very resistance they wish to eliminate. Imagine two people pulling on opposite ends of a rope. The harder one pulls, the harder the other responds. The struggle continues because both believe greater force will eventually bring victory. Yet the moment one person loosens their grip, the entire dynamic changes. The tension disappears. The battle loses its fuel. The same principle applies to conversations. When someone argues passionately, Matching their intensity often strengthens their position. Instead of becoming more open-minded, they become more committed to defending themselves. Their identity becomes attached to their opinion. Every new argument you present feels like another attack they must survive. At that point, facts matter less than emotions. Logic loses to pride. Understanding loses to ego. The disciplined person recognizes this pattern early. Instead of rushing to prove themselves right, they create space. They ask questions instead of delivering speeches. They listen more than they interrupt. They allow silence to exist without rushing to fill it. Silence has a remarkable effect on the human mind. It encourages reflection. It removes the feeling of being pressured. It gives people room to hear their own thoughts instead of only your words. There is tremendous strength in allowing others to arrive at conclusions by themselves. Advice that is discovered feels more valuable than advice that is handed over. When someone believes they have reached an insight independently, they defend it with conviction. Ironically, the less credit you seek for influencing someone, the more powerful your influence becomes. This requires patience, and patience is becoming increasingly rare. Modern life encourages immediate reactions, instant replies, instant opinions, instant judgments. But wisdom often moves slowly. A calm person understands that not every disagreement must be resolved today. Sometimes the greatest progress happens after the conversation has ended, when the other person is alone with their thoughts. Seeds do not become trees the moment they touch the soil. They require time beneath the surface before anything visible appears. Many people fear silence because they mistake it for weakness. They believe remaining quiet means losing control. Yet silence often communicates confidence more effectively than endless explanation. The person who feels secure does not need to defend every criticism or answer every challenge. They understand that calmness unsettles aggression. Emotional stability weakens emotional attacks because there is nothing for conflict to attach itself to. Observe individuals who naturally attract respect. They rarely react impulsively. When criticized unfairly, they pause before speaking. When others become emotional, they remain centered. This emotional discipline changes the atmosphere around them. People begin adjusting their own behavior because they sense that emotional manipulation no longer works. The calm person quietly controls the rhythm of the interaction without announcing it. Resistance also fades when people feel understood. Before attempting to influence another person, seek first to understand why they think the way they do. Every opinion has a story behind it. Every fear has an origin. Every stubborn belief protects something important in that person's identity. If you ignore these deeper motivations, you fight only the surface, while the real cause remains untouched. When someone feels heard, their defenses naturally lower. They no longer see you as an opponent trying to defeat them. They begin seeing you as someone willing to understand their perspective. This subtle shift transforms the entire conversation. Influence grows strongest in environments where people feel respected rather than corrected. Another mistake people make is believing they must always have the final word. They fear that ending a conversation without winning means they have failed. Yet the need for the final word often reveals insecurity rather than strength. Confidence does not require constant validation. It does not depend on proving superiority in every discussion. Sometimes leaving a thoughtful question unanswered has greater impact than delivering 10 perfect arguments. Consider how curiosity changes the human mind. A statement can be rejected immediately, but a sincere question often lingers long after it is asked. Questions invite exploration instead of resistance. They encourage people to examine their own beliefs voluntarily. This is why thoughtful questions possess extraordinary influence. They guide without forcing. They reveal without accusing. Emotional reactions are predictable. Pressure creates pressure. Anger creates anger. Defensiveness creates defensiveness. But calmness interrupts this cycle. When someone expects conflict and receives understanding instead, their expectations collapse. Their mind becomes temporarily open because the familiar pattern has been broken. Mastering resistance, therefore, begins with mastering yourself. If another person's emotions dictate your own, they already control the direction of the interaction. But when you remain grounded regardless of their behavior, you quietly reclaim that control. Your composure becomes your greatest advantage because it cannot be taken away by another person's opinions or actions. This does not mean becoming passive or avoiding difficult conversations. It means choosing the method that produces genuine understanding rather than temporary victory. There is a profound difference between winning an argument and changing a mind. One satisfies the ego. The other transforms the future. People rarely remember every word you spoke during an argument, but they always remember how you made them feel. If they felt attacked, they remember defending themselves. If they felt respected, they remember considering your perspective. Influence is rarely built through domination. It is built through trust, patience, restraint, and the quiet confidence that refuses to battle every resistance with greater force. Most people believe that influence begins with learning how to persuade others. They search for better words, stronger arguments, and more convincing techniques. They study body language, negotiation, and psychology, hoping these skills will allow them to shape the behavior of those around them. Yet they overlook the most important truth. The person who cannot control themselves will never truly control a situation. Before you can influence another mind, you must first become the master of your own. Human beings are constantly reacting. A careless comment triggers anger. A compliment creates excitement. Criticism awakens insecurity. Praise inflates the ego. Rejection leads to desperation. Approval creates dependence. Many people believe they are making decisions freely, but they are simply responding to external events without awareness. Their emotions become the steering wheel of their lives, and every person they encounter has the ability to change their direction. Imagine carrying a cup filled to the very edge with water. Every small bump causes it to spill. That is how an undisciplined mind behaves. Every disagreement, every disappointment, every unexpected event becomes another bump that causes emotions to overflow. The world does not need to do much to disturb such a person. A single sentence can ruin their entire day. A single opinion can destroy their confidence. A single obstacle can convince them to give up. Now imagine the opposite. The cup is steady because the hands holding it have become calm. The road remains uneven, but the water no longer spills so easily. The outside world has not changed. The difference lies entirely within the person carrying the cup. This is emotional discipline. It is not the absence of emotion. It is the ability to experience emotion without allowing it to dictate your actions. Those who master themselves understand that emotions are valuable messengers but dangerous rulers. Anger may reveal that something feels unjust, but anger should not decide your next move. Fear may warn you of potential risks, but fear should not imprison your future. Excitement may inspire action, but excitement alone should never replace careful judgment. Every emotion has its place, yet none deserve complete control over your behavior. This is why the strongest individuals often appear remarkably calm. They are not calm because life has treated them gently. They are calm because they have learned that reacting impulsively gives power away. Every emotional outburst reveals your internal state to the people around you. It tells them what provokes you, what frightens you, what frustrates you, and what captures your attention. The more predictable your reactions become, the easier you are to manipulate. People quickly learn where your emotional buttons are located. Some may press them intentionally. Others may do so accidentally. Either way, if every button produces an immediate reaction, your behavior no longer belongs entirely to you. It belongs partly to everyone capable of triggering those responses. Emotional discipline changes this completely. Instead of reacting automatically, you create a pause between stimulus and response. That pause may last only a few seconds, yet it contains tremendous power. Within those few seconds, you choose your response rather than allowing your emotions to choose for you. This simple habit separates thoughtful people from impulsive ones. Silence often becomes your greatest ally during these moments. Many conversations deteriorate because people feel compelled to respond immediately. Someone criticizes them, and they instantly defend themselves. Someone insults them, and they immediately retaliate. Someone challenges their opinion, and they rush to prove themselves right. Speed feels satisfying, but wisdom rarely arrives in haste. Silence is uncomfortable because it forces both people to think. It slows the rhythm of the conversation. It interrupts emotional momentum. The person expecting an immediate reaction suddenly encounters composure instead. This unexpected calm often changes the entire direction of the interaction. Silence also communicates confidence. Those who constantly explain themselves often seek approval without realizing it. They believe that if they provide enough reasons, everyone will understand them. But endless explanation frequently weakens authority instead of strengthening it. It suggests uncertainty. A person who truly believes in their choices does not feel obligated to justify every decision to every observer. This does not mean becoming cold or distant. Emotional discipline is not emotional suppression. Suppressing emotions means pretending they do not exist while they quietly grow stronger beneath the surface. Discipline means acknowledging every emotion without becoming its servant. You recognize frustration without allowing it to become hostility. You recognize disappointment without allowing it to become hopelessness. You recognize success without allowing it to become arrogance. Patience also becomes a powerful form of influence. Most people want immediate results. They want instant respect, instant trust, instant success, and instant agreement. When these things fail to appear quickly, frustration takes over. They abandon their principles because impatience convinces them that force is faster, yet nature teaches a different lesson. Mountains are shaped through countless years of quiet persistence. Great trees begin as seeds hidden beneath the soil. Rivers carve stone, not through violence, but through continuous movement. Lasting strength rarely develops overnight. It emerges through consistent discipline repeated long after enthusiasm fades. The same principle applies to personal influence. Trust cannot be demanded, respect cannot be forced, credibility cannot be purchased. These qualities accumulate through repeated demonstrations of integrity, consistency, and emotional stability. Every calm response strengthens your reputation. Every measured decision reinforces your character. Every moment of restraint quietly teaches others what kind of person you are. Another aspect of self-control involves resisting the desire to impress everyone. Many people exhaust themselves seeking approval from individuals whose opinions should never have held such importance. They alter their personality to fit different audiences. They say what others want to hear instead of what they genuinely believe. They become actors performing endless roles rather than individuals living authentic lives. Ironically, the pursuit of approval often produces less respect. People naturally trust those who possess inner stability. They recognize when someone constantly changes to satisfy others. Authentic confidence does not require universal acceptance. It accepts that disagreement is inevitable while remaining faithful to deeply held principles. Your attention is another form of control. Whatever captures your attention gradually shapes your mind. Constant negativity creates a negative outlook. Constant comparison creates insecurity. Constant distraction weakens focus. Many people believe they lack discipline, yet they spend every day feeding their minds with whatever demands immediate attention instead of what truly deserves it. A disciplined person guards their attention carefully. They understand that focus is limited. Every unnecessary distraction consumes energy that could have strengthened wisdom, skill, or character. The ability to direct attention intentionally becomes a quiet advantage in a world overflowing with interruptions. Self-control also requires humility. The ego constantly seeks recognition. It wants to prove itself superior. It wants praise, admiration, and validation. When the ego leads, every disagreement becomes personal. Every criticism feels like an attack. Every success becomes an opportunity for pride. Humility creates freedom because it removes the constant need to defend an image. You become willing to learn because admitting ignorance no longer threatens your identity. You become willing to apologize because protecting your ego is no longer your highest priority. You become willing to change because growth matters more than appearing perfect. Those who influence others most effectively rarely obsess over controlling external events. Instead, they devote enormous effort toward mastering their own thoughts, emotions, habits, and reactions. They understand that the outside world will always contain uncertainty. People will disappoint you. Circumstances will change. Plans will fail. Expectations will be challenged. Yet the one domain that remains available for continuous improvement is your own inner world. When your emotions no longer dictate your choices, when silence becomes more comfortable than unnecessary explanation, when patience replaces desperation, when discipline becomes stronger than impulse, and when your sense of worth depends more on your character than on the opinions of others, you begin to possess a kind of influence that requires no force, no manipulation, and no constant struggle, because your greatest authority comes from the quiet mastery of yourself, rather than the loud control of everyone around you. Most people assume that influence is something obvious. They imagine powerful speeches, persuasive debates, commanding personalities, and dramatic displays of confidence. They believe the person who talks the most controls the room. They believe the loudest voice carries the greatest authority. Yet, if you observe carefully, you will notice that the most influential individuals often do the opposite. They guide without appearing to guide. They persuade without announcing their intentions. They lead minds through subtle direction rather than direct command. The human mind values freedom above almost everything else. The moment people feel that someone is trying to control their decisions, an invisible barrier begins to rise. Even when the advice is wise, resistance appears simply because the choice no longer feels like their own. This is why indirect influence is so powerful. It protects another person's sense of independence while gently guiding them toward a better conclusion. Imagine trying to push water with your hands. The harder you push, the more it slips away. But if you create the right channel, the water naturally flows where you intend it to go. Human behavior often follows the same principle. Force creates resistance. Direction creates movement. One battles against nature, while the other works with it. Many people waste tremendous energy attempting to change others directly. They criticize habits, attack beliefs, expose mistakes, and demand improvement. They assume that pointing out flaws will automatically inspire change. Instead, the opposite often happens. The person being criticized becomes defensive. Their attention shifts away from learning and toward protecting their pride. Growth becomes impossible because survival has become the priority. A wiser approach begins with understanding instead of correction. Before trying to influence someone, seek to understand what motivates them. Every action serves a purpose in the mind of the person performing it. Even harmful behaviors often satisfy emotional needs, such as security, recognition, belonging, or certainty. Until these deeper motivations are understood, any attempt at influence remains superficial. Questions become one of the most powerful tools for indirect leadership. Statements often trigger resistance because they tell people what to think. Questions invite exploration because they encourage people to think for themselves. A carefully chosen question can remain in someone's mind for days, quietly challenging assumptions long after the conversation has ended. Consider the difference between saying, "You are making the wrong decision," and asking, "Where do you think this decision will lead you in 5 years?" The first statement creates opposition. The second creates reflection. One attacks, the other invites discovery. People naturally trust conclusions they reach themselves far more than conclusions imposed upon them. This principle applies not only to conversations, but also to leadership. The strongest leaders do not create followers who depend on constant instruction. They develop individuals capable of independent thinking. Instead of providing every answer, they encourage others to ask better questions. Instead of controlling every action, they create an environment where wise decisions emerge naturally. Patience is essential because indirect influence rarely produces immediate results. Many people become frustrated when change does not happen instantly. They abandon subtle guidance in favor of pressure because pressure appears faster. Yet genuine transformation requires time. Beliefs formed over years cannot always be replaced within minutes. Habits repeated thousands of times rarely disappear after a single conversation. Nature teaches this lesson repeatedly. Seasons change gradually. Rivers reshape landscapes through persistence rather than force. The sunrise never rushes, yet it always arrives. Lasting influence follows the same rhythm. It grows quietly beneath the surface before becoming visible through action. Another important principle is allowing others to preserve their dignity. Nothing strengthens resistance more quickly than embarrassment. When people feel humiliated, they focus entirely on protecting their self-image. Even if they secretly recognize their mistake, admitting it publicly becomes emotionally expensive. Wise influence avoids unnecessary humiliation. It creates opportunities for others to change without feeling defeated. It allows people to save face while choosing a better direction. This approach may satisfy the ego less because you receive less visible credit, but it produces far greater long-term results. Strategic restraint also plays an important role. Not every truth must be spoken immediately. Not every mistake requires instant correction. Timing often matters more than information itself. Advice delivered at the wrong moment is frequently ignored regardless of its quality. Observe how emotions influence attention. When someone is angry, their ability to process wisdom becomes limited. When someone is afraid, they search primarily for safety rather than understanding. When someone feels attacked, they prepare defenses instead of listening carefully. Delivering profound insight during these emotional storms is like planting seeds on frozen ground. The conditions simply do not allow growth. The patient person waits until the mind becomes receptive. They recognize that timing transforms ordinary words into unforgettable lessons. The same sentence that fails today may inspire profound change next month because the listener has become ready to receive it. Indirect influence also requires consistency between words and actions. Nothing destroys credibility more quickly than hypocrisy. People observe behavior far more carefully than they listen to speeches. You may tell someone to remain calm, but if you react with anger during every challenge, your actions become the louder message. You may encourage discipline, but if your own habits reveal disorder, your advice loses authority. Your daily conduct quietly teaches others what you truly believe. Character becomes a silent language understood without explanation. Many individuals underestimate the influence of example because it lacks dramatic moments. Yet history repeatedly demonstrates that consistent behavior shapes cultures more effectively than occasional inspiration. There's another subtle aspect of influence that many overlook. The desire to control outcomes often creates unnecessary suffering. We become attached to convincing specific people, achieving immediate agreement, or seeing visible results. When these expectations are not fulfilled, frustration replaces wisdom. Indirect leadership requires letting go of this attachment. Your responsibility is to plant seeds, not to force their growth. You offer perspective without demanding acceptance. You provide opportunities without insisting they be taken. This mindset protects your peace because your emotional state no longer depends entirely on another person's choices. People are more likely to trust those who respect their freedom. When they sense that you genuinely allow them to disagree, they become surprisingly open to considering your perspective. Freedom removes pressure, and without pressure, curiosity often replaces resistance. Another powerful principle involves recognizing that silence itself can communicate guidance. There are moments when refusing to interrupt allows another person to hear their own contradictions. There are moments when offering immediate solutions prevents someone from discovering their own strength. Constant rescue can unintentionally weaken independence. Allowing others to struggle appropriately is not cruelty. It is often an expression of respect. Every meaningful lesson requires personal experience. Wisdom borrowed from another person remains fragile until life confirms it through direct experience. The disciplined mind understands that influence is less about controlling others and more about creating conditions where better decisions become easier. Instead of forcing movement, you remove obstacles. Instead of demanding agreement, you encourage reflection. Instead of seeking victory in every conversation, you seek understanding that quietly grows long after words have faded. As your awareness deepens, you begin noticing these patterns everywhere. You recognize why some arguments never succeed despite perfect logic. You understand why gentle guidance often accomplishes what force never could. You see why emotionally secure people rarely feel compelled to dominate conversations. Their confidence allows them to trust the process instead of chasing immediate validation. The greatest influence is often invisible because it leaves people believing they discovered the path themselves. They do not feel manipulated, they do not feel defeated, they feel empowered. Their decisions carry greater commitment because ownership remains entirely theirs. This is the quiet art of leading minds through indirect influence, where patience replaces pressure, understanding overcomes resistance, thoughtful questions awaken insight, consistent character becomes the strongest message, and true leadership emerges not from commanding every step another person takes, but from helping them willingly walk toward wisdom through the freedom of their own choice.